Here's a couple of things that I always put in, and you can hear from his voice tonight. It's exactly what he done. You're selling on the fact that your brand, that your company is solving all of these problems. That motivated seller is now in a dark place. And as all they're thinking is, where's this money going to come from? She's not going to tell you, but her and her 3 siblings are probably having killings of who picked that agent and who's now going to foot the bill for it. Is the insurance company going to go? There's probably murder going on behind the scenes. And this is how I sell that shit all day long. You're going to get paid regardless every month. Guaranteed. The risk now comes with me. Never again you're going to have a call from another tenant. That woman is in the bank. Danny got that information out of her. And the second part is she wants to exit in about 4 or 5 years' time. She doesn't want tenants ringing her. In fact, in 2 years, it's clearly inevitable that she doesn't want tenants ringing her. She didn't even want to drop to the house to check the thing, which is a sin if you're a property investor. And that's the shit that happens if you don't do that. You get back a pile of shit. So we would know at this point that line number 2 is going to resonate with her so much. You're never going to get a call from another tenant. No more voids like you have now. No more problems. Update directly every 3 months or weekly from me if you want. Not from your tenants. No more problems trying to get different tradesmen to go in. That's a problem for even someone that's in the game now. And a 5 years plus gone out of your hair. She can now make the plans out the far end that in 5 years' time, her and her brother and her sister, whoever's involved in the deal, can exit. And Danny, what Danny's saying to you is tonight, he's got first refusal. Well, if she signs that legal document, she can't sell it to anyone else. She can only sell it to you. And the beautiful thing about this deal is you've got the obligation to buy the deal. You haven't got the right to buy it unless they use the one thing called a put option, which most legal teams, unless they're very, very good, won't. But what I'm telling you soul-heartedly, if you're not going to buy that thing out in the 5 years' time, don't do these deals. If your brain is telling you, I'm going to either fix this thing, get it back up cash flowing, and then exit out with a pension company or exit out to a buyer in 5 years' time, or else you're going to finance it. This works perfect. So it's completely out of their hair. Sign and we'll get to work. That's what he done. Again, I remember him clearly saying, I'm going to do this on the strength of that insurance money. And I said, don't fucking do it. Because hopefully that's going to be your lead in here. And it worked. So again, sign and we'll get to work. If she signs over on this side, well, what he used there was, that was the probably last avenue. He could keep the insurance money. And I'll ask him a bit more of the details of what actually happened in behind the scenes. He will ask the price at this point. All motivated sellers, once you have got all this information in, which is a lot of information, and you take it to a certain point, now they're like, what is that price again? And then we start to gently talk about the price. Now, let's just say that property priced today, through your expertise, because now you know how to value a property. The property turnkey is worth $250,000. In the condition it's in, it's probably worth at a quick sale $205,000. Why are you going to value that property? Remember, you're at the last inch of this deal. You say one wrong thing and you could ruin the deal. So I'm going to ask someone to mute themselves. You paid like €1,000 for that piece of shit and it doesn't turn on. Get us, turn the Bluetooth thing off in it that it just always is on. Now, sorry, where was I? Who's going to jump on there? Somebody unmute themselves. Can you hear me? Right, I'm just going to take Tim because it's the only person I can see. Tim.
Yes.
At this point, you know from your own expectation, from your own analysis, this is worth around 205 currently. You know when you and your team go in and fix it up and you get a cash flow, that's probably going to be worth 240 to 250. She knows in her head that one at the end of the street that was lovely, and it was brand new bathrooms, brand new doors and floor, was sold for 245. What number are you going to put on this now if you got a 7-year option on it?
Yeah, so you're going to be under the 205. So what? About 180 or something?
That would lose you the deal.
Up to about 200 grand, then I suppose.
Well, here's one way of looking at it. What I've done in the past is I've identified what the refurb costs are. So I've said, well, look, these refurb costs are going to cost me in around €27,750 or whatever it is. And then I identified what the value is of the property that's turnkey at the end of the road in this market. That's high. And I'd explain that to them. The property at the end of the road that you see, this is this one here. It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, that's gorgeous. Well, that's sold for 245. So if we took an average number that yours is worth 245 and we took back the refurb cost of 25,000, call it, and we put on this option 220,000 plus my refurbs, which will bring you up to 245 minus the refurbs. At 220, would you be comfortable? Out the far end, because I have to get my money back for the mistake you made. Most motivated sellers would say, well, that seems fairly fair. What we don't want to do is, we don't want to speculate that this market is on that trend up into the sky. That's gambling. That's not what we're here to do. We have to identify them two figures. Number one, what does it currently look like today? About 245. What is it going to look like if it's not refurbed? 205 at a quick sale. And then what is it going to look like when I put my 25 grand in with my refurbs? Now, I would always say you take back your refurb. They're never going to have an issue with that. And then I would lock in the longest option as I possibly could. And then I'd show the exit on the level of maybe 225. If you try and skin it or kill it at that level, you're going to kill the deal.
Yeah, but surely because you're doing the option deal and they're going to be getting paid all the rent for the next 7 years, and it is an amazing deal they're going to get, surely wouldn't they accept something a bit lower just because they know they're going to get everything else and they're going to get, all of those 17 points you've just run through? Or is it just
99% of the time, the only thing that they're worried about is what it's worth out the far end.
Gotcha.
And the only thing that you can guarantee is with your company is that if you take it to the level you've done it and you secure a price today. Now, if the market plunges and Putin blows us all up, we've nothing to worry about. But let's just say the market plunges and you haven't sort of protected yourself. You're in a dangerous position. Or if they force you up to 300,000 from what you know is only worth 250, you're a silly Billy. So you need to have a level of comfort in there. And usually at the very, very last point, greed will kick back in with them. And remember, they're only getting the mortgage. Most of the times, they're only getting the mortgage paid off this. Now, in Danny's deal that he has there, that's an unencumbered property. So that's cash flow they're getting. So they would have been really focused on the cash flow and maybe that 245 out the far end. So there are two things you don't want to mess with. You want to give them what they need on the cash flow, whether it's a mortgage payment or it's just slightly over the mortgage payment. I'm going to show you about all this next week. Or else you focus on what most people are interested in is the end value. So let's just say that there was 165,000 owed in this mortgage and you got a 10-year option. And you explain to that customer that client that is in a dangerous position at the moment that you can use this as a saving scheme for them to take that debt from 160 down to zero. If they have 10 years left on their mortgage and you can show them a way of getting from here to here, hassle-free in 10 years, and you've locked that option in at 240,000, that means they're getting 240,000 cashed out of that property in 10 years' time, guaranteed. Now, the strength of an option, and I don't want to confuse you on this, But if that thing goes to 500 grand, which you have seen in the last 2 years with properties, they've gone up. A lot of my units have gone up well in excess of 150,000. And you haven't got that option locked in properly. And you go to court. You do not have a leg to stand on. But if you have that option locked in watertight correctly, and you've served everything that's on that contract sheet, or you've served everything that's on that head of terms correctly, that judge cannot argue with you. You've found a person at a time that was really, really in a dark place, and you've brought them forward, and you've brought them to a certain level, and you've got the option, and now you're going to clear it. And now they're starting to play games with you. Well, at that point, you can head to court. And at that point, they will not have a leg to stand on. And remember again, even when they're in a place that they can't get out of at the early days, their legal team have to explain all this to them. So let's just say they were suffering from mad anxiety at the time. Well, their legal team can't get them to sign for this thing. The legal team have to advise them correctly of what they're doing. And if it makes sense to the legal team now, and it makes sense to the client now, job done. If they come back after 10 years and say, Paul, listen, that thing's worth 500 now. Go fuck yourself with the 240. That was then. Now it's different. That is not the way an option works. You can exercise that option and they have no rights. This thing is so powerful, done correctly. If you do it wrong, you're like building it on, you're building a double-story extension on muck. And we'll go into it a lot more.
Sorry, Paul, it just shows, though, that you need to be really, really wise on the person or the type of person that you choose to be in a deal like this with, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. And that's why I'm trying to say to you, and that's why we're spending so much time tonight with like Land Direct, trying to check these things, trying to read these things, because I don't know, from my side of the coin with rental stock, and that's why I let Tara deal with the whole management of that now, because I've just too much stuff in my brain. But when somebody, think about this for a second. If you're in a hotel room tonight, you will say anything to get into your own house. They will lie through their teeth. And if I was in that position, I would lie through my teeth. You would too. All of us here in the group would do it to get your family a home, right? We mightn't mean anything by it, but we lie through our teeth. Now, if that scenario happens to you in a lease option and there's a big debt on it, and we haven't done our searches correctly, or we haven't seen mortgage statements, or we haven't seen that there's a judgment on the property, and Tim takes that thing to 10 years, and next thing the judge says, yeah, Paul, well, everything is hunky-dory here and everything's grand, but on 2008 when you signed for this, did your legal team make you aware of the judgment that was on the property? And we'd say, no. And he'd say, well, it's for 65,000. So that's going to come off the bill first. You're like, fucking son of a bitch. So go into the mindset in property. And I think I spend a lot of time talking to Ed about this. You nearly have to become a private investigator just to make sure that that one deal is crystal clear. You don't want any hidden things popping up. There's enough shit that can pop up, but especially with creative finance and especially entering into a deal with someone that you may not necessarily know, you have to be really careful.